that has Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert and Lamar Jackson and Trevor Lawrence, right? And so I think that they've been abnormally aggressive in free agency, and I expect them to try to be abnormally aggressive in the draft. Now, the question for me, because it's a great unknown with New England, is one, are they going to take a quarterback? And then two, what style of quarterback is it going to be? Because there is the reality that we have Justin Fields and Trey Lance in a certain style of quarterback grouping where those players are going to do more with above the X's and O's. Those guys are going to take a play call, and if it's not there, they have the talent and potential to do more with that play, to win that type of rep, where Mac Jones is going to consistently execute that play call at a relatively high level, right? And so do the Patriots and Josh McDaniels want to go back to what they did for 20 years or so with Tom Brady, which is running that offense and just having a guy just be dialed in with his execution on a consistent basis, not give you much more than that? Or do they want to do with a little bit what they flirted with Cam Newton last year, with the athleticism, being able to do more with just the X's and O play call? At the end of the day, I think Josh McDaniels has a huge decision for New England.
All right, so Yates, let me come to you on this question. If Justin Fields does go 3, which is what they projected there, it is not what is widely expected. But if that were to leave Mac Jones and Trey Lance on the board, if you are Bill Belichick, which one are you going up to get?
I'm trading up for Trey Lance. I just see a significantly higher ceiling for this player. And Dan's correct that Mac Jones fits the confines of what the Patriots have had under center for 20 of the past 21 years. Obviously, last year being the exception. But you have to look at the direction in which the NFL is evolving right now. You had 8 quarterbacks rush for over 400 yards last season. The Patriots, within their own division, saw Josh Allen make major strides last year. And yes, he's a gifted thrower. But where he can really torture you is on second reaction plays. Even if his initial read is not there, or if there is pressure in the pocket, Josh Allen might run towards the sideline like he's getting ready to run out of bounds, and the next thing you know, launch a football 24 yards down the field to Stephon Diggs. The game is changing. Trey Lance offers you ability to keep up with how the game is changing.
So, Mike T., you know Belichick well, and again, we're projecting him to do something here that he has literally never done before. Would you explain that and then explain what you expect him to do?
Sure. In the 5 years that he ran the Cleveland Brown drafts and the 20-plus years in New England, he's never taken a quarterback in the first round. He's taken one in the second round, Jimmy Garoppolo. But when you started the offseason as aggressively as they have, spending all that money, it's impossible for me to think that they're not going to complete the deal and not go up and get a quarterback. And I understand what Field and Dan just said, but I think we're overcomplicating it. Yeah. And maybe because I was on the losing end of so many of those games for 20 years. But if it was good for 20 years, go get Mac Jones. He's incredibly accurate. He's smart. He's the closest to Tom Brady. Go run it back with Mac Jones for a long time.
Yeah. That has been one of the things we projected for quite some. Go ahead, Danny. Real quick final thought. Go.
Yeah, I just think it's important for us not to lose sight of this. Quarterbacking in the NFL always has been and always will be about who do you have to throw the football to, when should you throw the football to them, and where does the football need to get thrown precisely. At the end of the day, that will always win out at the quarterback spot. And right now, Mac Jones does that, the best out of that group of 3. Trey Lance, Justin Fields, and Mac Jones. Mac Jones does that the best out of that group.
Let's see if that's the decision that Belichick winds up making. Stay close, guys. Much more football as we go. But let me run the bases through yesterday in the majors, and it starts with Dylan a little later. But Orlovsky, you're next. Cowboys, 9.5 wins, more or less.
All right, Tad Prescott, I'm going to say more. Mainly because, one, I got to imagine Dak Prescott is worth 3 wins, and then the 17th game gives them another opportunity to win another game. That being said, if they're going to get above 9.5, Dak will have to play better than he did in those first halves of the first 4 games. I'll say the Cowboys get over 9.5.
Okay, we will see. In the meantime, what they really need is better defense, and we'll see. Last year, they were just historically awful. They allowed the 2nd most rush yards and the most passing touchdowns in franchise history. Stephen Jones runs the show there. He had this to say yesterday on 105.3 The Fan.
Certainly that's one of the goals in this draft is to improve defensively. And then, as you said, if the right guy presents himself, not unlike CD did last year, sometimes you just got to be in a situation where if he's by far the best player left on the board, then you've got to have confidence that you can make that selection.
What he's talking about is how the plan last year was to go defense, and then C.D. Lamb dropped to them when they weren't expecting it, and they grabbed him. So the question to you, Dan Orlovsky, is if they're going to go over, if the Cowboys are going to be a playoff team this year, what do they have to do with that 10th pick in the draft?
They have to take a defensive lineman. It's their biggest need. It's their biggest need two-way, both skill-wise, they don't have enough good players there, and scheme-wise. Now, the conundrum for Dallas is there's probably not a player at the defensive line at number 10 worthy of that pick. And that's why the Cowboys are kind of in a tough spot. They need defensive line help. There's just not a player worthy of being selected there at 10. So you can sit there and say, we'll take one of those corners. Patrick Surtain out of Alabama, J.C. Horn from South Carolina. Likely going to be really good players. But Dan Quinn is coming from Atlanta, the ex-head coach, as their defensive coordinator. He is going to run predominantly that cover 3 defense that was notorious in Seattle. Well, the Legion of Boom partly became the Legion of Boom because the defensive line in Seattle, Cliff Averill and Michael Bennett, they had think of the San Francisco 49ers 2 years ago. That secondary played so well because of the addition of a guy like Nick Bosa. And so Dallas needs to fix their front 4 before they can ever think of allowing that secondary to play better than they did last year.
Right. To your point, at 10 probably isn't the spot to do that in this draft. So Mike Tannenbaum, I'm giving you that pick. With the players who are realistically likely to be available to the Cowboys at 10, who are you taking?
I'm taking Patrick Surtain. This is the easiest decision of the draft, and I see it a little bit differently than Dan. And Dan, as a former quarterback, you know this. If you don't have enough corners, you are sent home immediately. They're going to pick you apart. Patrick Surtain opposite Trayvon Diggs, you got a real chance. He has prototypical height, weight, speed. He has production. He has great character, and he is an ideal fit. He's a plug-and-play player. He reminds me a little bit of Darrelle Revis. I think it's a no-brainer. He's a 10-year starter. Just turn the card in.
How about you, Field? If we look at the players there, again, Cowboys at number 10, who are you taking?
Yeah, so I was going to offer up Patrick Surtain the second as well for a lot of the reasons that Mike just highlighted. J.C. Horn from South Carolina unquestionably in that mix as well. Now, I will say this. Surtain, who you see here, has the pedigree, obviously was tested in the SEC, has won a lot of games, been a part of big moments. That could help Dallas. If they do want defensive front 4 help, and I know that Dan was likely referencing edge players, but Christian Barmore from Alabama, to me, should absolutely be in the conversation for one of the top 10 to 12 selections in this year's draft. He's a freak. He's a force. It's a different angle of pass rush up the middle, but I love that player. I think if they go with Barmore 10th, I'm sitting there saying, job well done, Dallas.
That's an interesting one. He was the defensive MVP of the championship game. Came on, he had 8 sacks last year as a defensive tackle, but 10 overall would be, Dan, would that be high?
Listen, I loved watching Barmore calling Alabama games last year. I mean, especially as an interior pass rusher. I could just tell you this. The number one thing quarterbacks hate the most when it comes to defensive line play is somebody that's going to rush us in our face, that's athletic enough to push that pocket. I think Barmore has the ability to do that. I saw him do it at Alabama. And going back to the corners, listen, you can have good corners all you want. If you're going to play cover 3 against me and you don't got a pass rush, we'll rip you apart. We will absolutely gut you. So Patrick Surtain's going to be really good, and J.C. Horn's going to be really good, and Trayvon Diggs got a chance to be really good. If the Cowboys don't get a pass rush and they're going to play cover 3, they're going to get gutted by good quarterbacks.
Interesting note. We got Surtain and Horn, both of them had dads who played in the NFL, Patrick Surtain and Joe Horn, the longtime receiver, 4-time Pro Bowler. All right, so we've got that. Then I want you to hear something that was said yesterday by Tyrann Mathieu. So it's been nearly 3 months